on, I changed my speech at 1 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I thought, you know what? Let's make it more fun, more exciting, and more helpful to all of you. So we are going to talk about leading a workforce revolution. What does that mean? I'm not going to go over all the staffing issues and everything going on in our field because you know about that. What I want to work is on the solution piece. But I really want to start with this fact that I am a firm believer, and I hope you will be too by the time I'm done with this, that we do not have a staffing crisis. We do not have a staffing crisis in senior living. What I firmly believe is we have a culture crisis. We have a culture crisis. Our problem began long before these last few years. And in fact, 10 years ago when I started my business drive, I would tell people, we're going to get to the point where we don't have enough staff to take care of the people that we serve. We will not be able to have new people move in to our communities because we're not going to have enough staff. And people would laugh at me. They would say, never! Never would we shut down taking new people moving in with, and never, 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 never. It won't happen. And yet, here many of us are, right? So, I want you to repeat after me. We have a culture crisis. You ready? We have a culture crisis. We also believe that we're victims. I see a lot of this in our field, right? This is all happening to us. Everything's against us. And I want you to switch that mindset. And by the way, can we get a little bit more excited than we have a culture crisis? So we are not victims. We have control. Isn't that a wonderful thing? So repeat after me. Let's do this together. We have control. Let's try that again so we can really believe it and feel it in our bones. Ready? We have control. It's true. It feels unsolvable, this staffing crisis. People tell me, I've tried everything. Bonuses, I've raffled cars, I've done this, I've done that. It feels unsolvable. But here's what I know to be true. It is our time. What does that mean? Right now, and I'm going to share with you in just a moment why that is, right now, more than ever, we can own workforce, we can own staffing, we can have the lineup, the virtual lineup, of people applying for jobs, just like Google and Facebook and all these tech companies have had for years, okay? It's our time. And you might not believe that right now. I'm going to ask you to repeat it anyway. But at the end of this presentation, you will believe it. It is our time. In fact, I've been in this field I'm 52. I started at 16 as a dietary aide. I was a CNA. I was an executive director and administrator for 17 years. I've done the work that I've done doing now for culture around the country for 10 years. I am more excited now than ever for what's happening in our field. So I want you to repeat after me, it's our time. Are you ready? It's our time. So culture, you're going to hear me say that word a lot. You probably hear this word a lot. Culture is the way things work around here. That's it. No fancy definition. It's just the way that things work around here. Engagement is how people feel about the way things work around here. Notice that slight difference, but it's a huge difference. Culture is how people work. Engagement is how they feel about that. I'm here to tell you, I love you all dearly. You know how much I love you all. But if you are measuring engagement, it is not enough. You need to go deeper. And I'm going to show you some information about why. It's not a bad thing you measure engagement. You're doing something, but it's not enough to know engagement. Remember back in the day we would measure satisfaction, right? And then we were like, oh, that's kind of old school. That's how it is now, right? We know more now. We can do better. So why is this so important to talk about culture? because a toxic culture is actually 10.4 times more likely to drive out staff than compensation. And this is research, I don't know if you could see it there, from it says some really smart person in MIT in 2021. So during the Great Resignation, MIT looked at why are people leaving? Not just our field, but workplaces in general. And what they found as relative to compensation, toxic cultures were 10.4 times more likely to drive people out. That stat should scare you. And it should scare you because I know from the research that we've done in measuring cultures that relationships and culture is even more important to the people that work in senior living than other fields. And Bob mentioned this yesterday, the importance of relationships. So we know for a fact that relationships are the most important part of a culture for the people that work in senior living. So this fact, we could be celebrating it if you have a really strong, great culture. And if not, this should scare you. So I need 2 volunteers, and I need another chair. Can I get 2 volunteers? 2 volunteers? I thought I'd be fighting over who? Murray, thank you for being brave. And I can't tell who else got up with you. Not that, oh my gosh, that would have been a disaster. All right, while they're coming up the stage, who remembers this car? That's it? Nobody else remembers this car? All right, what do you remember was special about this car? There was no seatbelt, right? Remember your mom used to give you the mom seatbelt?
It was a swing.
Right, it was a swing. What else? Seats way in the back. Okay, this is what Murray and Denise are now going to demonstrate for me. So, do you remember this car? Okay. So, does anybody not know what I'm talking about? All right, excellent. I can't see who that is. Okay, so we have some people. So we're going to all demonstrate for you that this actually did exist. So, just to set the stage, anybody know what the greatest crash zone in a car is? The very back, okay? That's the highest crash zone in a car. And what Denise and Murray are demonstrating up here is where the children would sit in the car, right? Facing backwards in the highest place for a crash with, as some people said, no seatbelt. This is where we would place our children. And do you remember you would fight with your siblings over this? I mean, there was like fist fights over who got to sit in the back. And Denise and Murray, we're going to pretend you're siblings. Now you've won the fight to sit in the back, and I'm mom, and I'm driving my car this way, so I'm not paying attention. What are you doing while you're sitting back here as I'm driving? Fighting, you're making faces, you're trying to get the guy behind you to wave, right? So in addition to being in the highest crash zone, we are also completely distracting the driver behind us, right? Now, does this mean that our parents didn't love us because they put us in these seats? A little bit, Denise says, right? No, that was what they knew. That's all they knew at the time, right? Now we know better. We got seatbelts. We don't have these in the back seat anymore, right? We do better. Thank you for being on stage. Big round of applause for our models. That was easy, right? So we know better, we do better. And I want you to think of this the same way as when we think about culture in our organizations. When we think about purpose, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about purpose in just a moment in our organizations. It's not that you've been bad. It's just that we know better now. And because, as Maya Angelou says, we know better, we can do better. And so it's our time to do better, friends. It is our time to do better. So how does this apply to this staffing crisis, culture crisis that we're in? Well, one of the questions that people ask, have you been thinking this? Where are all the people? Right? When you're going to hire, do you just wonder what happened to the people? Like, there was people there 5 years ago. What happened to all these people? So here's where the people have gone, some facts. Today, there is 59 million people working gig jobs. 59 million people. In 2027, they're predicting that number is going to go up to 85 million people working gig jobs. In 2021, 5.4 million new businesses were started. 5.5 million new businesses were started, right? It's easier than ever. You have a computer. You can be sitting on the beach in the Bahamas running a business. In 2020, just from 2020 to 2021, that number jumped 24%, okay? It was like 4.9 million in 2020. So it went up 24% in just that 1 year. We had, and Scott mentioned this yesterday on the panel, we had 3 million more retirees than we normally have. That's where all our people have gone. So what is the common thread here? What's the common thread? Anyone want to guess? Doing what they want to do. People doing what they want to do. Or as I like to put it, none of them want to be us. They don't want to be us. My kids look at me. I had a stroke 3 years ago, mini stroke. They don't want to be me having a mini stroke because of stress. They don't want that. People are going to retire and get out because they want something different. They're going to have a gig job because they want something different. They're going to start their own business unless we can meet their needs in a different way with things that they cannot get in a gig job, in their own business, or in retirement. So here's the thing. Ooh, that got screwed up. Culture is our silver bullet here. Culture is what's going to save us. Culture brings us together in community, which is what people want. Culture makes the work that we do matter, which is what people want. We have to give them those things if we are going to compete with all this other competition that I just showed you. So I'm going to share with you some research, some facts, and I'm going to share with you the sad truth, though, and I call it sort of the but slides. I'm going to share with you a fact, and then the but, here's what's actually happening in our field, okay? So here we go. Here's our but slides. That is literally the picture you get when you look up the word but slide, which I don't recommend doing. My culture is very important. So Deloitte asked leaders to say yes or no to these questions, right? My culture is very important. So they asked this question to leaders. How many people think their culture is very important for all of you? Culture is important? Yeah? Okay, I hope for those of you not raising your hand, you're drinking your coffee or something, because I hope you all believe that. Well, you know what? It turns out that 89% of people answered this question, yes, it's very important. But here's the thing, the but. But we guess our culture, don't we? We say things like, I have a great culture, or my culture's fabulous. And often I ask people how they know that. And the answer I get back is, they can feel it in their gut, or they just know it deep down in their bones. And so I ask these people that tell me that, you ever rolled into a board meeting or an owner's meeting or investors and said, listen, I didn't look at the financials last month because, you know those numbers, I don't really need them. I can feel it in my gut. We had a great financial month last month. What do you think would happen? There'd be a job opening really quickly, right, in that organization, right? We do that. We say we can feel it, but we would never do that with our financials. And yet culture is driving our financials. Think about that. Culture is driving our financials. We laugh at the fact that we wouldn't guess our financials, but yet we guess what's driving them. The next question Deloitte asked, I understand my culture. I understand my culture. You want to take a guess what percentage of leaders said they understood their culture? 100? No. 50? Getting closer. 28%. Somebody said 30. Pretty close. 28% of leaders said, I understand my culture. But here's the thing. And I'm going to talk about this tool in a little bit, get into more detail. This is actually data that shows when asked about the current culture in their organization, what the staff said compared to what the executive team said. And cultural entropy is the energy working against us. It's things like blame and bullying and job insecurity and poor communication and bureaucracy and confusion and so forth. So low cultural entropy is better. It's the energy working against us. So we want that to be as low as possible. And we can see here, the executive team, 12% cultural entropy. Not that high. It's a pretty decent score for cultural entropy. And yet the staff, same organization, 37% cultural entropy. So the staff, more than three times the cultural entropy of the executive team. Once again, that's the energy working against us, the values and behaviors that are not supporting what your goals are in the organization. Finally, Deloitte asked leaders, are you good at developing culture? And this is what people said. 12% of people said, yes, I am good at developing culture. So there's some recognition there, right? There's 88% of people are saying, nah, I'm not really good at this. So they understand it. But here's the thing. The culture of your organization, your company, is being defined by the worst behavior that you're willing to tolerate. Think about that. The culture of your organization, your company, is being defined by the worst behavior that you are willing to tolerate. You do not know what you are tolerating. Okay? Once again, love you all, but you do not know what you're tolerating in your organizations. I see it all the time. Think about respect. Of course, you're respected as the leader, but is that trickling down through the whole organization? Communication. Communication's great with you. Is that trickling down through the whole organization? And so you're tolerating things. Some of it you might know. You might have people on your executive team. I see this sometimes. Right? They're great at this, but they're just not good with people, and we accept that. We tolerate it. But there's also a lot you don't even realize you're tolerating. So I want to step back in time for a moment to tell you why, despite all this kind of bad news and all these things I just shared with you, that I'm so incredibly excited about the future of our field. So I want to talk to you a little bit about where we are heading as an economy that we get a chance to own. Our time. So we started out as an agrarian economy. Farmers coming together, farming together, trading food and so forth, right? That was our kind of first economy. We moved to an industrial economy. Right? Machines were created, factories, assembly lines, and so forth, and we became an industrial-based economy. Most recently, we were in this information economy. This exchange of information became super important. Technology, and we see, like I said earlier, Google and all these other companies with lines of people that want to go work for them. Here's the good news. We are moving towards a purpose-driven economy. We are moving to a purpose-driven economy. You are probably seeing some of this already in your companies, in your organizations. And we're seeing it in our country. We will continue to move towards this. Now, this sometimes baffles some of us. I'm like, I wanted to be a Charlie's Angel when I was younger. I wasn't worried about purpose. I just wanted to solve crime and have my hair look good. But people now are concerned about purpose. The millennials, 75% of them said they would take a lower paying job if it had more purpose. Think about that. And the most powerful source of purpose comes from when we know we are doing something that matters. How fabulous is that for our field? Is that not a wonderful thing? If purpose comes from doing something that matters, who does work more than us that matters? I can't think of anybody. We're taking care of people for weeks, months, years, serving them at the ending of their life when they still have so much life still to live and give. What incredible purpose that should be. So I want you to repeat after me. And we need a little energy in this room. You ready? Our work matters. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Our work matters. Right? Our work matters. Repeat after me. Our work has more purpose than any other work. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Our work has more purpose than any other work. Are you starting to believe that? Are you starting to believe that we can own this purpose-driven economy? Because we can, if we want to. And so why? Why are we moving to this purpose-driven economy? There's a few reasons. There's a great book by Aaron Hurst called The Purpose-Driven Economy. And what he talks about is evolution is one of the reasons. That we're actually moving up in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs from high school or college? Safety and security at the bottom, self-actualization at the top. I'm going to share with you in just a moment how that actually applies in organizations too. But for people, we're moving up that hierarchy. We're not worried so much about safety and security. We've been moving up in that for generations, and now we're moving towards the top. Longevity. People are working longer and longer, and they want their work to have purpose. So if I'm going to be working into my 60s, 70s, maybe my 80s, I want my work to have purpose. And the other thing is turmoil. So people have seen lots of collapses and mergers, and it's sort of created instability. And people want to have this fact that their work matters, that they have this purpose in their work because of this sense of instability. So that's the why we are moving to this purpose-driven economy. So I want you to think about this. What do your potential staff think of working in senior living? What would you say people, the potential staff, think of working in senior living? Shout out some things. What do you think people think of senior living? I heard something, I couldn't hear it though. Incontinence. What else? When you tell people what you do, what are some of the things you hear? It's depressing, right? It's kind of stagnant, it's old school. Institutional, yeah. And what do we want people to think? What do we want people to think? It's rewarding. We make a difference, right? It's sexy. So I want you to think about this question. What's really your culture? Is it coming across as purposeful? Is it coming across as making a difference? Is it coming across as sexy and exciting? Spoiler alert, I've read some of your Indeed ads. No, no, no. Okay? Go look at your Indeed ads. Sometimes I just want to cry when I look at them. How depressing and sad and boring they are when the work we're doing is life-changing. It does not come across. So I promised to tell you a little bit about Maslow's sort of hierarchy and this switch to organizations. So about 25 years ago, Richard Barrett, as a researcher, took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and said, this applies to organizations. It's not just people that are going from safety and security all the way up the ranks to self-actualization. This applies to organizations. And Richard Barrett took that work and applied it to organizations. And I know you can't see this, but the big thing that I want to point out here is there's 7 levels here, and they go from viability, which is I'm safe at work, we're going to stay in business, that we have stability in our life, to relationships. Remember I told you how important relationships are to our field. To performance. That's processes and so forth, right? We're moving up just like Maslow's hierarchy needs. To evolution, I'm ready for change. To alignment, I can show up as my authentic self. That's what alignment is. I can go to work. I remember people would say to me at work, you're so positive. Stop being so positive and happy, right? That's a culture that was not aligned with me and my personal values. And I did not want to work in a culture like that. I didn't know the word culture at the time. I just knew it felt icky to work there, and I didn't stay very long. Collaboration. How are we thinking about the greater good, our communities? And finally, contribution. This is really where people are living with purpose. So just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to be thinking about this in your organizations. This is unbelievably important. Here's the research that we've done. We've looked at, and this is our field, by the way. This is research out of Drive. This is our field. This is not the entire everywhere, right? Current culture, here's what people say are the top 10 values they see in their current culture. Teamwork, caring, customer satisfaction, employee recognition, safety, confusion, compassion, cost reduction, accountability, and continuous learning. Okay, that's what they're seeing right now. Overall, this is all the organizations we work with. And we work with better organizations. So this is probably slanted a little bit to better organizations. Desired culture, top 10. Accountability. By the way, do you find it fascinating that accountability is almost always at the top of the list in every organization? It is for desired culture. Teamwork, caring, employee recognition, continuous improvement. That was not on the list in the current culture. This is a new one that shows up. Respect, not on the current list, on the new list. By the way, this tool also measures DEI. So if you're working on DEI initiatives, it actually can measure that for you to see if it's making a difference. Compassion, coaching and mentoring was not on the current list. It is on the desired list. Employee engagement, not on the current list, on the desired list. And finally, open communication, same thing, not on the current list, only on the desired list. So here's the thing. If you are only looking at where you are now with your culture, what purpose you have now in your culture, it is not enough. You have to be asking people. The question that they answer to get this information is if we were performing at our best as an organization, what are the top 10 values or behaviors that you'd want to see? If we were performing at our best as an organization, what are the top 10 values or behaviors that you'd want to see? And they choose from a list of words, and these words are actually all placed on that hierarchy that I showed you. Here's what we know from our research. Organizations in the top quartile of culture, so the strongest cultures compared to the weakest cultures, have 38% lower turnover. 38%. What wouldn't you do to drop your turnover even 5%, much less 38%? That's the difference that culture makes. This, by the way, is our field. This is research that we have done. This is not everybody out there. This is our field. Culture and revenue, this is a general. This is not just our field. This is in general. 3 times the revenue growth over 3 years. Stronger cultures compared to weakest cultures. I find this one fascinating. This was one organization. Think about this. One organization. 31 different communities, memory care. We have this white paper on our website. They looked at their cultural entropy compared to their occupancy. Here's what they found. Remember, Low cultural entropy means less negative culture stuff going on. So the lower the number, the better. Low cultural entropy, the occupancy was 94%. When it was in the middle, the occupancy was 76%. And when that cultural entropy was over 20%, occupancy was 66%. So it's impacting turnover, it's impacting revenue, and it's impacting occupancy. And it impacts engagement, no surprise. But this is why I tell you engagement is not enough. Culture is driving engagement. So how do we do it? How do we focus on culture and focus on purpose-driven cultures? Know your real culture to ensure sustainability. None of this gut stuff, none of this I can feel it in my bones stuff. Data. Data is what we want to be using. Okay? We want to be using data. Know your real culture, because only then can you do something about it, and only then is it sustainable. What we know from our research is, if you focus on coaching and mentoring, which is fabulous, and some people mentioned it yesterday, it's wonderful. I'm not going to stand up here and say, don't coach and mentor people, but here's what I know to be true. Coaching and mentoring falls apart like that if you don't have other things in place first. Respect, recognition, and accountability. Coaching and mentoring is the fourth tier that we found in our research. First is respect. Respect, recognition, accountability, and then coaching and mentoring. So if you're focusing on other things and they're falling apart and you're spending money and you can't figure out why they're not sustaining, that is why you're probably focusing on the wrong thing for where your organization is right now. Not that it's a bad idea, but it's just not where you're at right now. Next, embed purpose in your culture. Constantly think about, how do we share purpose? Tell people they're making a difference. Make that link for them. Indeed ads, start with that. Job interviews, tell stories and ask questions about purpose. Orientation, talk about purpose. Every single meeting, talking about purpose. So your values, your mission, your purpose and organization becomes not on the wall, not just on the name tags, but becomes something that people are living and breathing every single day. The more that you all talk about it, the more your teams are going to talk about it. And the more your teams of leaders are talking about it, the more your staff are going to feel it, and the more your customers are going to feel that. So embed it in your culture. Establish the business case for culture. I showed you occupancy, I showed you revenue, I showed you turnover. Make sure you know, we all know occupancy, you all know revenue. I'm shocked by the amount of people that don't know their turnover numbers in detail. Know that stuff so you can see, as you're starting to make changes, the differences. We've had people lower their turnover 35% in a year, but they knew what they started with. We have people that have filled all their open positions, but they were tracking that so they could see the things they were doing were working. And finally, I want to encourage you to elevate the purpose and the culture function in your organization. What does that mean? It means it's not thrown on HR, that it's an HR thing, and let the recruiter work on it. That's what people do a lot of times. The recruiter, they can work on that culture thing to bring in more people. Elevate it. They should be part of your C-suite. The people working on culture should be part of your C-suite. They're that important to your organization. They're literally driving every single outcome in your organization. So I want to encourage you. The revolution begins with us. We could play victims. We can complain about the staffing crisis, the workforce crisis, and all this. But at the end of the day, it's up to us. And we have the absolute perfect opportunity right now, today, to take advantage of it. So unsolvable staffing, and I encourage you, it's my last slide. I'm going to ask you to be loud and proud with this one. On the count of three. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. It's our time. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Denise, for an awesome presentation.